Hey, everybody.
What a show we have tonight.
Man, yeah. We haven't heard that intro in a while, have we?
No. I remember making that intro. I made that intro in my woods.
You did a good job on it. And the Aztec death whistle in there. I'm looking here. I see several people in the chat already, and I'm glad to see everybody on there. I haven't had my show in a while because I've moved since I did mine last, and it takes a while to get Wi-Fi down here if you can, get it at all. So I'm coming to you from Frog Level, Alabama.
Roll Tide.
Yeah, man, we're gonna have a good one tonight. Have you been doing okay?
Yeah, been doing all right. Other than catching myself on fire.
You should probably, before we start, you should probably tell that little story.
I was just being lazy, and instead of going and getting me some diesel fuel, I just put a little gasoline on some brush I was burning, and it sort of exploded. And next thing I knew, I was remembering from the 6th grade, the fireman teaching us to drop and roll. And so I hit the ground and I rolled once, and I still had flames on my left shoulder going down my arm. And I come out of that row. I go back into the second row, and I'm still seeing flames. And as I'm rolling, I'm thinking, this time I'm going to stop where the flames are at. And so I stopped, and it smothered the fire out. But you probably can't tell, but I've got some blisters and stuff on me. Just stupidity.
Ooh, that's horrible. That's so horrible, dude.
Hey, it's a shame I wasn't videotaping it. It would have made great TV.
Yeah. You waited till a nice cool day to go outside to try to burn some stuff, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's been hot down here. Down here in Alabama, the humidity is really, really, bad down here. And you know me, you've camped with me and been lots of places with me. I always wear a long sleeve sun shirt, to keep the sun off of me, and I wear a big hat to, cover up and stuff. That makes it a little bit hotter. But anyway, I ain't gonna keep people waiting any longer here. We've got a really good guest tonight, and this guest was actually on the Woodwalkers show a week or so ago. I hope somebody posts that link in the chat. Man, we were thrilled. They were thrilled to have him on Woodwalkers along with Coonbo, Tim Baker. So I thought, man, maybe we can get this guest to come on the Beast show and maybe do it a little bit different.
What about Larry? Larry was on there.
Yeah, he was. Well, Misty too. I mean, I wasn't counting the hosts. I was just counting the guests that were on there, because that's two pretty monumental guests to have on your show. To have Vic on there, and then also have Coonbo on there too. But anyway, that's who it is. Vic Cundiff has one of the longest running and most listened to shows on the Bigfoot Dogman subject. Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm sure everybody has listened to that at one time or another. I was telling him that I used to listen to it at work with an earbud in, and Vic has one of the smoothest voices in the radio world, and I used to turn him on and listen to him as I went to bed at night with the phone sitting by the bed. But anyway, without further ado, Vic Cundiff of Dogman Encounters Radio.
And I'm going to step backstage.
That'll work.
Thanks
Vic,
for having me on, Bama.
oh man, I'm glad to have you on. We've been stoked all day about it.
Well, it's great being here. Like I said, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how long has your program been on the air?
Well, Dogman Encounters, the first episode of that show aired on August 22nd of 2015. And then the first episode of Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio aired, I think it was just about a year later in 2016. Okay. So they've been on for a while now.
And how many episodes do you think you're up to?
Well, Dogman Encounters, this Friday I'm going to release episode 473. And then Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, I aired episode 380 just about a week ago or so.
Wow, that's really something. And really, when I hear you say that, I mean, Vic's show, if there isn't anyone that hasn't listened to him, his show really is people calling in with their encounters or their experiences or whatever happened to them. So if you just think of just the number of shows, that sheer number of people that have seen something or something's happened to them, that's what I always think about when I see those high numbers of episodes. But you've been pretty successful.
Well, thank you, sir. I've done all right. Don't lose sight of the fact, though, Bama, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, a lot of the people that contact me about their encounters with dogmen, they don't want to be a guest on the show. And that's never a problem. There's never any pressure to come on Dogman Encounters and put your encounter or encounters, as is the case sometimes, out there. If someone wants to just contact me and get some help to deal with their encounters, then by all means, let's do that. So, yeah, the grand total of eyewitnesses I've spoken with over the years is in the thousands. I've literally spoken with thousands upon thousands of them. I spoke with my first Dogman eyewitness in 2007 or 2008. I can't remember which year it was, but I was co-hosting Campfire Shadows back then. And this eyewitness told me about how he lived right by the border of the LBL, and he had a pretty gnarly encounter late one night when he was home alone. So when I heard about that, I asked if he would tell me later on after this show that we were both listening to, and he said, sure. So he told me the details of that encounter he had, and wow, I thought, holy cow, this whole Dogman thing is something else.
I want to circle back to that in a few minutes because I wanted to, but if you're on, we have to talk about Dogman. It's just the way it is. Even though Spencer and Larry, they don't care much for the Dogman subject, but we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. What I wanted to do different for everybody listening and that's going to be listening here in the future, not many people know much about you or that you had your own experiences over the years. You're always getting other people's stories and stuff all the time, but I want to hear about the things that happened to you and maybe kind of how you were brought up or what type of area of the country you lived in, things along that line.
Well, my experience, the first experience that you just touched on, that was a little over, I think, 40 years ago. Wow, that's a long story there. I had a neighbor 2 doors down who, even back then, I think he was in his mid-70s. His name was Tony. That was his first name. And wow, I'll tell you what, the things that man had done, from hunting to camping, fishing, and just traveling all these neat places. And being a sucker for a good story, I've always been a huge sucker for a good story. And I've always loved the outdoors too. Well, it was just a perfect storm. I used to go down there and sit on that man's couch, asking him to tell me story after story about hunting trips he had taken and all these different things, until this man would pull his newspaper out and start reading his newspaper as my cue that I had worn out my welcome. But yeah, I mean, the stories he would tell me. For example, one time he told me about being attacked by a black bear. And I thought, okay, yeah. I was attacked by a black bear in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and he said the place. I'm thinking, yeah, you've got to be pulling my leg now. All these amazing experiences you've shared with me over the years, and you're going to tell me now that you were attacked by a black bear? That was kind of like the tipping point. I thought, okay, maybe all this is just a bunch of hot air. So then after he told me the particulars about how it all played out, I guess he was in this evergreen grove or something like that, tracking the deer that he had shot. And all of a sudden he got this feeling like he wasn't alone. And he didn't think it was the deer. He thought it was something else. So finally he dropped down to his knees, looked underneath the canopy of the pine trees, was looking around. And then it's been so many years, like I said, over 40, some distance away, he saw that there was a black bear doing the same thing, looking right at him as he was looking at it. And the moment that he saw it looking at him, he said it just charged right through the trees. And he thought it was going to be a bluff charge, but he said, no, it didn't wind up being a bluff charge. It actually pulled him over, and then it turned around and came back. And the first thing it did was latch onto his leg right around the calf area. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this sounds like a pretty impressive story, but if that happened, and then before I could even finish that thought, he's pulling up his pant leg. He showed me his leg, and you can see the scars from the teeth. You could see where the indentations from the teeth of that bear in his leg. I'm thinking, holy cow, this guy is the real deal. So anyway, he knew that I love the outdoors, and he had a farm way out in the sticks. I mean, way out. Well, he told me, he said, I'll tell you what, Vic, if you go and get your license, your hunting license, deer season's not all that far away. I'll take you to the farm opening night, or actually the night before opening day. And we'll just spend the weekend there, and I'll show you the ropes on hunting. So I thought, okay, well, yeah, you've got a deal on that. So I went and attended the hunter safety course, and before too long, I had my license, and it wasn't that long after that we were heading into November, and hunting season was coming around. Well, like he promised, the night before season opened up, I went down there to his house, and he drove us down to his farm. And like I said, you talk about remote. This place was out in the middle of nowhere. I don't even know how long you could have walked without even coming across a road. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Perfect spot to hunt and buy property like he had. He had a huge property. Well, anyway, the next morning came, and all the things that he had shared with me the night before about the ropes, about hunting deer, they were all spinning around in my head. And I really didn't want to disappoint him, because he had taken all this time and all this effort. Well, I just wanted to come through and do my part, what I felt was my part. So when we pulled up to his farm, there were two bay horses there that I saw on the way to the house. And I never will forget, he told me the name of the first horse, and then he told me the name of the second horse, that name being Red. He warned me, he said, I know you love horses, Vic, so I'm going to warn you now. That horse over there, I forgot its name, he's fine, but this one here is Red. And whatever you do, stay away from Red. Don't even think about trying to pet him, because he'll hurt you. So that was fresh in my mind as well. Okay, stay away from Red. So the morning of season, we got up about an hour and a half or so before dawn, had something to eat and drink, and then we got dressed in our coats and gear and stuff and headed out the door. Well, we're literally walking into nowhere. The trees weren't that far from that that cabin / house on his farm. We just walked into the trees, and we walked and we walked and we walked. And finally, after going up this huge hollow, down another hollow, and just going through the woods up and down like that, we came to this spot on the side of this real steep, big hollow where he said, okay, this spot right here up against this tree, that's your spot. You're going to be here until I come back this evening and get you. He told me, remember everything I told you about what to do out here, and you'll be just fine. Maybe you'll bag a buck or whatnot. So I went ahead and I sat down, got comfy, and it wasn't too long after that the sun came up, and I'm just keeping an eye out, doing all the things he told me to do. Well, I really didn't see much of anything. I don't think I even saw a squirrel or anything like that. I'm just sitting out there thinking, okay, there's nothing going on out here. It's just dead. Well, I don't really remember what time it was. I think it wasn't that long after noon or so. I'm sitting there with my back up against this huge tree. I'm pretty sure it was an oak. I'm sitting there with my back against this tree, and the tree was probably about 4 feet in diameter. It was a big one, 3-4 feet in diameter. And I'm just doing my thing, scanning slowly to the left, scanning slowly to the right. No head movements, just being as still as I can. And all of a sudden, from what sounded, it's hard to gauge exactly how far it was behind me, but it sounded to me like it was probably 20 feet, 30 feet behind me, directly behind me. I hear this loud horse whinny. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it scared me at first because of how loud and sudden it was.
Mhm.
And then after that, my mind started going in a direction I didn't want it to go in. I'm thinking, oh no, that's Red. Somehow Red followed us out here. But the problem with that was the slope that I'm sitting on was too steep for a horse to navigate. I guess a horse, if it really took its time, more than likely a mule actually, if it was really careful and you didn't have all this leaf cover, it might be able to navigate it really slowly. But it was a very steep slope. And there, like I said, there was a lot of leaf cover on the ground, probably close to a foot or so of leaves. And, you know, when you think about how steep the slope was and all the tree trash laying down there on the slope, number one, a horse in almost any case wouldn't be able to navigate its way to that spot behind me, number one. Number two, if it did, I would have heard it coming a long way off. There's no way that could have been a horse back there. And then after it whinnied, for people who don't know much about horses cannot breathe through their mouth. They can only breathe through their nostrils. It's just in the way they're built. And because of that, that's why you hear them clearing their nostrils so much. That's why they do that so often. And if you could only breathe through your nostrils, you'd do it too. Yeah. Well, they also make this sound, as I'm sure you know, where they do a blow. If there's maybe a bigger obstruction or they feel like they need to be more forceful about clearing out their nostrils, they'll do this concussive, I can't even really describe it. It's like a concussive clearing of their nostrils. And you just hear the air volume just blast out. Well, that's the best way I can describe the next sound I heard. That's what I heard behind me. And there is no way that I'm a big guy, and there's no way I have close to the lung volume to be able to move that amount of air, number one. And number two, just to make that sound, you could tell that whatever it was, I can't see how whatever it was that was right behind me, I can't see how it could have been any less than 1,000, maybe 1,500 pounds. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It had to have horse-sized lungs, or maybe even bigger, to move that kind of air and to make that concussive type. You could literally feel the concussion. I don't know if you've ever stood next to a horse when it's done that, blows down, but you can feel it. And it's just like, wow, there's no way a person can do that. Yeah, it was just crazy. I wasn't thinking Sasquatch back then, but as the years went on and I learned more about Sasquatch, I kind of reflected back on that experience and I thought, you know what? I can't think of anything else it could have been. Now, granted, I didn't see what it was that did that, but you tell me. I don't know what else it could have been. So I think there's like a 97, 98% chance that it must have been a huge Sasquatch behind me.
Do you remember hearing it leave?
I never heard it leave. And I even looked around the tree trunk really slowly. I looked around one way, didn't see anything. Then I looked around the other way. This was when I was convinced that, it's a horse. So when I'm looking around the tree, I expected to see red coming after me. But yeah, I didn't see a thing. So, and when I looked around one way and then I looked around the other, I looked around in a way that if there was something back there, there's no way it could have hidden, you wouldn't think, unless it was up against that tree trunk on the opposite side of me. Right. And that's another sick thought. Over the years, after I found out about Sasquatch and I was putting the pieces together, how long had it been there? And also, how close did that Sasquatch get? Was it right up against the tree on the opposite side of me? When I wasn't looking, was it reaching out to maybe count coup? I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, wild experience.
Man, that's really something. It's like you said, you thought it was Red, the horse, coming to kill you in the middle of the woods. And you never, how old were you about that time again?
Well, if I revealed that, I'd reveal my age, but.
Oh, okay. I won't think.
Yeah,
did this man ever tell you any stories about anything, or did you mention it to him?
I did mention it to him. Well, actually, I did mention it. Come to think of it, I did mention it to him. And then as I started telling him about it, I probably stopped thinking, okay, he's going to think I'm crazy, even posing the idea that it could have been Red out here. Yeah, we walked and walked and walked. We weren't anywhere near that pasture, his cabin / home on the farm. We were way out in the middle of the woods and all that surrounded his house. But yeah, there's just no way that could have been Red. So I guess I probably kind of stopped before I revealed everything to him. But that area, I will tell you this, that area where his cabin / house was, the farm, it's Booger Central. So now, knowing what I know, and if you think about all the wild land around there, it's no surprise. I bet you have tons of boogers around there to this day.
Yeah. What was it you heard later on, whether it was on TV or radio or whatever, that made you tie it back to that experience, to where you thought, oh, maybe this was a Sasquatch?
Well, finding out about all the different sounds that Sasquatch make, how they mimic animals, and people talking about hearing them make sounds where it's clear that their lung volume is ridiculous, at least for the bigger ones and all. Yeah. Just finding out more information about them and putting the pieces together, basically.
That's a neat story. I see Dan Ricky is in the chat. You know Dan Ricky, and
I do. Dan and Vicky. Hi guys, how are you?
And Vicky's in the chat too. Some of the original outlaw bunch there. Yeah, that's an awesome story. Now, do you still live somewhere where it's rural, or are you still able to get out in the woods? Do you still hunt? Still do anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've got woods right behind me. And yeah, I do get out when I can. When you produce 4 podcasts, and on top of that, you help Dogman eyewitnesses contact you. That does take quite a bit of your time. But no, I mean, I still go deep into the woods. I just recently, last night, I went on a good walk through the woods. Didn't have anyone with me, but yeah, I still get out there and everything. I don't hunt because I'm an animal lover and don't really need to hunt. But yeah, I do get out, and I love the woods. And I've got woods around me that have boogers and dogmen in them, or dogmen in them.
Do you see, like, I don't know if we covered this on Spencer and Misty's show. Do you see sign of them there where you are? stick structures, anything along that line? I know you know what to look for.
I recently found a stick structure, and I'm not sure how many years it was before that, but I was walking through the woods pretty deep, and I found a Sasquatch print. So, yeah, they're around. They're around.
Yeah. Man, that's great. Me and you were, chatting a little earlier, and we were talking about how you actually had another encounter that's been pretty recent, a close encounter. I want you to cover that with the folks. See, isn't it strange hearing Vic tell his encounters instead of someone calling in and telling theirs on his show? But yeah, we'd like to hear that one too.
Well, there's a method to that madness. I'd rather have the guests, the eyewitnesses, put their experiences out there. And of course, I want to lay back in the background, but I understand. This one wasn't really all that close of a range or anything like that. That's part of the problem. That's why when we had this conversation, I told you, I don't know for sure if it was a booger or not, but I don't know. I think there's probably a 60% or greater chance it was. The story behind that was, this was like 3, maybe 4 years ago. I was on a walk out in the country and everything, and I had green field on either side of me. And the green field had grown up to about maybe, I'm a tall guy, like I said. So I was still able to see over the things that were growing up in that green field. The green field was probably up about 5 feet or something like that. Well, because of the slope of the land and everything like that, in some parts I could see a good ways, and in other directions I couldn't see all that far. But as I'm walking and I'm looking around trying to keep a beat on my surroundings, I'd say probably a quarter of a mile or maybe a little less up ahead of me and to the left, I see this black figure. And there are people who go to this area to basically use the land, walk dogs and all that stuff from time to time. Well, I see this black figure running towards me up and over this bridge. It goes over this little creek, and the bridge is like a pretty good arch to it. So I see him running up and over the bridge, and as he's coming up, I can see more of his figure. And as he's running, it's hard to describe it. As he was running, when people jog, it's normally a pretty smooth group of movements. Well, this character, it was looking at this figure's feet. It was more of a plucking the lower legs up as they were running, and its head was pretty smooth as it was running at the same time. I can't do it any justice to explain it, but what I saw was all black. It could have been a jogger with a black hoodie on, a black sweatpants, and maybe the hood might have been pulled up. Like I said, I wasn't close enough to be able to know for sure, but the figure turned to its right, to my left, and just started running parallel to that creek. So I was able to watch them, and at that point, from pretty much the chest up or whatever, because after coming back down the other side of that bridge, he was about at my level. But yeah, when it disappeared out of sight, my head was spinning. I was trying to figure out, okay, was that a person or was that a booger that I just saw? I don't know. All I can do is guess. But like I said, I think there's a greater than 60% chance it was a booger.
If it was a jogger, it seems like they would just come on by you, instead of veering off and running up the creek.
Yeah, maybe, but they probably didn't see me because, like I said, the green field had grown up so tall, number one, and where I was coming from, there isn't really much. So they just turned right and headed down the trail the other way, to their right, to my left. So I don't know.
Was it of normal human proportions, or could you tell?
Yeah, it looked pretty normal in proportions. It didn't look, it wasn't a situation where it looked really wide, like some of the boogers are reported as being really robust and wide. Didn't have a build like that. So if it was a booger, it must have been a juvenile or something.
Huh. Yeah, or one of those skinny ones we have down here.
Yeah, it might have been.
Let's go into the Dogman stuff for just a few minutes, if you don't mind. I'll tell you what I would like to do right before that. Of course, I'd like for you to tell me a couple of accounts that you've had from people. I've heard, almost all of them, I think. The one that you told the other night or the other day on Spencer and Misty's show, the second you started telling that account, I remembered that one. And it is really one of the creepiest ones. But what about the Bigfoot side of it that you get? How many calls do you think you get from people?
Well, I think it's kind of known that I'm a Dogman guy. I don't help Sasquatch eyewitnesses. Normally, I don't help Sasquatch eyewitnesses come to terms with their encounters. I only devote time to doing that for Dogman eyewitnesses. But that just means that the people who contact me about their booger encounters, they're just looking to be guests on one of the two shows, either my Bigfoot sighting, that's my new Bigfoot podcast, or Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio. But yeah, the stream of eyewitnesses is much stronger on the Dogman side for me than it's ever going to be for the Bigfoot side. But yeah, it happens from time to time. I'll get an eyewitness who's had such a traumatic Sasquatch encounter that I'll try to help them come to terms with it. But yeah, that's just the rare exception right there. I normally don't do that.
And I know, besides just having people on the show, that you catalog and write down details and keep meticulous notes and things along that line. Have you been able to figure out, like, if we were to look at a map, would you see hot spots as to where, they have the most Dogman encounters?
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a Dogman researcher. Everything I've learned about Dogman is just happenstance. It's fallout from talking with so many eyewitnesses over the years. So, yeah, I
was wondering if when you spoke to them, if maybe once you figured out where they were, if they told you that you were maybe sticking a pin in a map somewhere, to where I was wondering, kind of that type of deal. Just from people calling with their encounters. Are there any spots that are just eat up with them?
Well, Kentucky, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Ohio, they're just overrun with Dogman encounters right now. Oklahoma has quite a few of them as well. But yeah, these encounters come in from all over the place. I mean, just a few days ago, I had one come in from Belgium. But yeah, they happen all over the place. If you think you're going to move to a part of the country that's going to ensure you're not going to have an encounter with the Dogman, you're going to be pretty disappointed, because there is no place like that. Yeah. But yeah, I don't even put pins in a map to mark where the encounters happen, because my main focus is just trying to help these eyewitnesses come to terms with their encounters. When you have people contact you who have had their lives ruined by encounters with these guys, unfortunate encounters with these guys, I mean, I focus on that, trying to help them come to terms with that so they can get back to good.
Yeah. Gosh, I can't imagine. I still don't know if I can wrap my head around it. You know that we're LBL people. That's just our main place that we go and camp, and I was camping there many years before I ever even joined the group and started camping with them. And even though I spend so much time up there, I know all the stories. I've been to the places where these stories supposedly took place, several times. And it's still hard for me to wrap my head around it. And I've camped there a lot alone. And I think about it when I'm alone. it's all, if I saw a Sasquatch, well, I don't know what I would think, but at least I would go, well, finally there, I saw one. But a dog, man, I think I would have to see one to really believe it. And I believe people. I believe people have seen them. I know people that have had terrifying encounters with them. And I'm not saying I don't believe the people. I think this is something different, Vic. Don't you? I mean, don't you think this is something different than some type of just an animal or something?
If you do what I do for any period of time, it's only natural you're going to bounce back and forth between at one moment being convinced that they must be flesh and blood, and then the next moment being convinced they have to be supernatural. But yeah, I think there does have to be something to these guys that explains their ability to do so many things that are inexplicable. I mean, if you think about it, explain how an eyewitness could have an encounter in Tennessee one day or one night. They get rattled, understandably so. They decide to drive straight home to their home in upstate New York. Well, the next night after getting home, they have an encounter with that same Dogman in their backyard. You just can't explain that as being a flesh and blood critter out there. But then again, on the other hand, if these guys are from the ether, then how do you explain eyewitnesses seeing them eating fetid roadkill on the side of the road in the middle of the night, drinking nasty water out of stagnant moss-covered ponds covered with duckweed, and being seen with young ones a foot tall, 2 feet tall? How do you explain that? So It's only natural if you do this for any period of time and you speak with a certain volume of eyewitnesses that you bounce back and forth. I don't know.
I don't know. Sometimes we kind of laugh about it or make jokes about it, but I don't know. You said that the first report you ever got of a dog man, your first one that you ever took, was up close to LBL. Is that right?
It was. From how he explained it, it was pretty much right on the border of the LBL. And if you want me to flesh that out now, I can.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'll do the best I can. Yeah, keep in mind, it's been almost 20 years now that he told me about that experience, right. But I'll do the best I can to put the pieces together, especially considering the fact I've had thousands and thousands of eyewitnesses tell me the details of their encounters. So yeah, the details can kind of get mixed up there. But anyway, from what I remember, his wife had gone out for a night with the girls, and that just left him alone with the dog. And I guess to occupy his time, he was just upstairs. It was a 2-story home. He was up in his bedroom, or their bedroom, laying on the bed watching TV. And all of a sudden, he said he started hearing this strange sound. He wasn't sure if it was the wind making a branch tap the house or what, but he started hearing this strange sound every once and again. So after a while, he turned down the volume on the TV to listen, and he didn't hear it. So he turned the volume back up. And then after a while again, he started hearing that sound again. But what in the world? So he would mute the TV and listen. Nothing. Didn't hear anything. Oh, must be crazy. So he put the volume back up, and same thing again after some period of time. Well, finally, he left the volume up and then just quietly walked out to the edge of his bedroom, stood in the doorway. And I guess his bedroom door looked straight down the steps. And at the bottom of the steps was the kitchen. And then in his view, in his full view, was the back door, which was on the back wall of the kitchen. Well, they had a dog, and it was a big dog too. So they had a pretty sizable doggy door in that door. Well, they left that door unlocked until this happened. They would leave that door unlocked all the time, the doggy door, so the dog could come and go. Well, when you look down the steps, I can't remember if that doggy door was shut when he first looked down there, or if when you look down the steps and across the kitchen and to look at that door, if this was actually going on the moment he laid eyes on it. But anyway, the gist of it is, to his horror, he could see this arm with a clawed hand coming through that big doggy door. And then he could also, I don't know if he instantly, when he looked down, could see the Dogman's head and shoulder jamming against that doggy door as it seemingly was trying to come in the house. But yeah, the gist of it is he actually saw this Dogman's head, its arm, and its shoulder reaching in through the doggy door as it seemed to be trying to gain entry into his home. So once it realized that he was looking down at it, I think he said it pulled itself out of the doggy door and just disappeared. He didn't see it anymore. But can you imagine?
That's rough.
That
Man,
is.
I remember that one. That's probably one of the more creepier ones you've had. And like I mentioned, I said, we kind of laugh about it and stuff like that. We do understand that people that see these things never have a positive interaction or a positive experience, and the majority of them are, left with some level of trauma because of just seeing them. So, we're not making light of it like that. The stories are but the stories are, just crazy.
Oh, no doubt about that. Yeah, that's a pretty gnarly one, but it gets a lot worse than that. Imagine the eyewitnesses who had them come into their home.
Can you think of one of those off the top of your head?
Well, there was one where a guy had a divorce. And when the divorce happened, he bought this little home out in the country. And it was definitely a fixer-upper, he said. So being a handyman, after work, almost every day, he said he would go out there and work on it to make it so it was livable to the point where, okay, it's not done, but at least I can live there and then work on it at my leisure because I'm living there now. Well, he had almost gotten that home to the point where he could live in it, if I remember right. And he was there late one night after work. And what he had done was, it didn't have a garage, if I remember right. So he was storing all of his tools that he was using to work on the home in one of the back bedrooms in the closet. So he was taking a break, I think it was, in that room, in that back bedroom where all the tools were. And he was sitting on the bed, I think he said, just taking a break, and power was turned on to the home so he could run his tools, but he didn't have anything on. So it was just dead silent. Well, as he's sitting there just relaxing, he said he could hear the floor creak. You know how it is in homes, Bama, where if the heat is off and it's kind of chilly out, well, it's going to be chilly in the home if there's no heat.
Right.
You ever been in a home like that and noticed how the floors are more prone to creaking and making more noise than if the heat's on? Well, I guess that's what you're looking at. Well, he said as he's sitting there on that bed in the back bedroom, he started hearing the floor creak really slowly, like something or someone was trying to walk really quietly and slowly across the floor. And as he's listening to the creaking, it became clear to him that whatever it was or whoever it was moving towards the back bedrooms. So he's just sitting there listening, thinking, okay, what in the world could that be? Is it a person? And I don't remember much else of that except for the fact that he had a chainsaw that he had been using not that much earlier in the evening that was sitting in the closet there of the bedroom. So he picks it up. The engine was still warm, he said. He picked it up, and on the first pull, it fired up, and he instantly took it to full throttle. Well, at that point, I think he said that whatever it was, he could hear that it was almost right at the doorway. So in one motion, he picked up the chainsaw, he said, fired it up, went to full throttle with it, and then grabbed the doorknob and threw the door open. And when he threw the door open, there was like a 6-7 foot tall Dogman there standing in the hall. And he caught it off guard, and especially with that chainsaw running full on. He said he chased it out of the house with that chainsaw. I don't really remember how that ended or anything, but can you imagine?
No, I can't.
Yeah, I know. It gets worse than that too. It really does.
Ooh, there's a, and you've had several, people call you about the area up at LBL, haven't you?
Oh yeah, yeah, I have over the years. Understand the volume that I've been dealing with for a long time. I don't bat an eye if I have 3, 4 brand new Dogman eyewitnesses contact me in one day who I've never heard from before ever in my life. And on some days, I'll have as many as 7 or 8 brand new eyewitnesses contact me again, who I've never heard from before. Now, that's not the norm, but it does happen. So the volume, I mean, for a long time now, it's been huge.
Do you have return callers?
Do I have return callers
Yeah,
because they've had
like
other
people.
encounters? And
Yeah, they've had several encounters with them.
oh yeah, yeah, that
Oh,
happens all the time. Where I'll talk with an eyewitness, and maybe a month down the road, maybe a year down the road or more, they'll reach back out to me to let me know they've had another encounter. And sometimes it's a situation where that first encounter, or maybe they had several before they contact me for the first time. Maybe the first encounter or encounters that they had before they contacted me weren't all that bad. And then down the road, they contact me again, and this most recent one was really bad, or at least worse than the first ones. But sometimes vice versa. Sometimes the first one's really bad, and then when they contact you back to update you on a more recent one, yeah, it wasn't all that bad at all. So it just runs a gamut.
and it can be anybody, right? Not just a hunter. In fact, the two you just told weren't hunters, but I wonder. I always, for example, we have a person in our chat right now, Rogers, in our chat, and he had an encounter with a Sasquatch for 15, 20 minutes.
Wow.
Watched it come out, and the whole time he's able to watch it through a scope from a tree stand. And then eventually it comes to his tree stand and stands down there and has a fit, Vic, for 10 minutes or so while he's standing there watching it. I always wonder, because he got to see this thing, and I've never really heard of many hunters. Now, I don't know if it has to do with a gun or whatever, but I've never heard of too many hunters that's encountered one. It always seems to be a camper, or somebody just having a roadside crossing, or something along that line. How many do you get from hunters? Because I always wonder about people when they have a gun in their hand, how they're going to react.
Oh yeah. Tons of hunters have contacted me over the years, and in a lot of cases they forget that they've got a gun in their hands. So in a lot of cases it'll frighten them out of the woods for good, or at least after we have a talk they say they plan to head back into the woods. But I always caution them, baby steps, take your time and don't rush it.
Yeah.
But yeah, tons of hunters do. People from all walks of life, judges and hunters and attorneys and mechanics, you name it, whatever walk of life, everyone, all of them have encounters, it seems like.
I know that several that I've heard, there would be multiple witnesses there. I don't know, not that gives it more credibility in my mind, but I'm always interested when I hear one that has multiple witnesses, because different people have a different take on it. They see things differently because they feel things emotionally different. That's what I think in a situation like this. Can you remember a story where it was a few people, or I'm sure out of all your thousands of stories there?
Oh yeah, a lot of them involve more than one person, more than one eyewitness. Yeah, it happens. It does happen. You'll have one eyewitness tell you about seeing more than one dogman at one time. You'll have encounters where there were a group of people there and they saw a dogman. Understand that whereas in most cases, Sasquatch seem to really go out of their way to avoid an encounter happening, and especially if you have a gun. But these guys, I mean, they're epitome of being bold. They don't care if you have a gun in a lot of cases. It doesn't really seem to affect their actions or anything. They'll still come up to you and they go where they want to go. They do what they want to do. They're much more likely, I guess I should say, to come into an area that's got lights. At nighttime, they've been seen standing right underneath lights on the garage next to a home. And yeah, they're just bold. They're bold and they do what they want to do, and they're not really deterred very easily at all.
I'm reading that on this Can Squatch is on there. He said his favorite episode was where they put bear traps under the windows. And then I can't see the chat here.
Oh, episode 66.
You can remember exactly which episode that is?
Oh, yeah, episode 66. You wouldn't believe how many times I get messages from people asking, okay, I watched this one, or I listened to this one show a couple of years ago where this happened, that happened. In a lot of cases, I don't remember which episode it was, but for certain ones, the more popular ones, I do a fairly good job of remembering.
Tell me that one, or tell all of us that one. I keep forgetting it's just not just me and you sitting here.
Episode 66, the one with the traps under the windows?
Yeah, I want to hear what Cans is talking about.
Let's see. There was a guy who came on, I think he told a story about how when he was a kid, his uncles, somehow they knew a thing or two about hunting dogmen. And he shared all these things that he saw them do, laying out traps underneath windows around this home way out in the country where they were staying, and they would cover the bear traps up with dirt and debris and stuff like that so you couldn't see them, but of course they were still there. So I think they wound up catching a dogman that day or that night. The dogs, they take all the dogs inside the house with them. They had all these things that he said they knew to do. Okay, do this, do that, do this. It was almost like a protocol because he framed it up to make it seem like they had done this so many times. They had almost perfected it. Well, he talked about, like I said, taking the dogs inside, and then you watch the dogs. When they start acting funny, then you know the dogman or dogmen are around, and they would wait. And then when they heard one of the traps snap, they ran out there and they got around the dogman and started firing on it with, I guess, 12 gauge rounds, double-aught buckshot, I think, or something like that. And he talked about how the dogman looked laying on the ground there and how they cut the dogman's body up and scattered the pieces all over. I forgot why he said they did that, but he said that's something they would normally do. But yeah, that's episode 66.
Wow. That may be some good nighttime listening tonight.
Yeah, if you don't want to go to sleep, I'd say.
Well, yeah.
And to answer Ronnie Tucker's question, tons of daytime sightings. More sightings are reported during daytime hours than at night.
I want you to know Dan Ricky said that episode 66 was his favorite episode.
Yeah, a lot of people say that.
If Dan Ricky says that, then it must be a good one. I'll have to check that one out. Yeah, I was wondering if there's any, I was wondering in hearing all these eyewitness reports, if you see similarities or, of all the encounters that I've heard of with Dogman, and normally I'm hearing them told through somebody else. People, one of the commonalities is that people just talk about it just looked like pure evil, or this thing looked at me like it, wanted to kill me, or something, or just, I wonder if you find any, because you probably get more reports than anybody does, Vic, on Dogman stuff. Are you seeing any similarities or anything?
Oh, sure, all the time. It's really no different than collecting eyewitness reports about black bear encounters. If you were like a resource for black bear information and you had it set up so that people who encounter them or see them contact you, you know that the details that they shared with you are going to be really similar. And it's no different with what I do. I would be suspicious if the details were too varied from this eyewitness to that eyewitness. I mean, we're talking about, for the most part, the same thing. Dogmen have a lot of different looks, but I mean, if you think about how many dogman eyewitnesses I've spoken with who've encountered the type that look like hyenas, and then also on the other hand, how many dogman eyewitnesses I've spoken with who've encountered ones that look like true werewolves, or the ones that look no more assuming than a timber wolf that was standing up on its back legs. I mean, you name the type of dogman, and I've spoken with droves of eyewitnesses who have seen that type. So yeah, after a while, you look for things and you expect things. So yeah, it's gotten to the point where I can almost finish sentences for these people. It always cracks me up when an eyewitness contacts me and tells me, "You're not going to believe this, Vic," and then they go on to tell me something that I've heard a million times. It's like telling a mechanic, "You're not going to believe this, but my spark plugs have threads on them." Really? Wow. And there's an electrode. Really? But yeah, there are definitely patterns. And here's something pretty interesting, or maybe it would be interesting to you. I just received, talking about the volume of encounters I receive, I just had one come in. Just had a dogman encounter come in that happened in February of last year.
You just had one come in right now?
Let's see what time. Came in at 9:09 Eastern time, so about 50 minutes ago. But we were talking when it came in, and it happened in Hopkins County, Kentucky.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't believe the volume. People who see these things, in a lot of cases, one of the problems that they have to deal with is that isolation. Why me? It's only me. I'm the only one who has to deal with this thing, with this weight that I've been made to bear, when that's not the case. Not by a long shot. I make sure they understand that there's so many more encounters that people have with these things than they're ever going to know. I'll tell them, in a lot of cases, I'll tell them, you probably know people who have had encounters with these guys too, but you don't know it because they haven't told you about their encounters. I mean, look at that right there. We're talking here, and just a minute, less than 10 minutes after we started the show, I had another report come in from an eyewitness. I mean, we're not talking about isolated incidents here. I mean, it happens all the time.
There has to be so many that don't call or just don't tell anybody. There has to be way more than call or tell somebody about it. Have you seen it Have you seen it increase over the years? Now, I don't know if people are just becoming more comfortable or people are just more open-minded about stuff, but have you seen it increase over the years?
You know what? I get asked that all the time. And my answer is, I don't think it's increasing. I think our awareness of them, number one, is increasing or has increased. And then number two, our ability to communicate is ridiculous now compared to how it used to be. I mean, think about how it was back in the 90s or the 80s, especially the 70s. Think about how it was back then. You could have something happen that wasn't all that notable someplace far away, and who knows how long it might take to get to you. But nowadays, with social media, all the things going on, I mean, no matter where you are in the world, if anything notable happens to you, it could be across the world in just minutes. So I think it's our ability to communicate efficiently. That is the biggest reason why it seems like more encounters are happening now. But yeah, I think they've been with us all the time, the whole way. And I think the same volume of encounters are happening now as have happened pretty much at any time throughout history. We just know more about all these encounters that are happening. Well, not all of them, but we know about so many more encounters that have happened now than we used to hear about back in the past.
Have you had any encounters come from the state of Alabama down here? And I know that I know there's some encounters down here. I've seen people in chat talking about it before, but how many you think you've gotten down here?
Wow, I couldn't tell you how many I've fielded over the years, but oh yeah, there have been a bunch of them down there.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't even guess how many have come in though.
Yeah, really, just having gone to LBL so much, over the years, really, there's almost a different air to it with me now when I go there, knowing things now. Camping there for years and years and years before anything ever happened, I still never felt completely, I don't know, I never felt nighttime always made me nervous there for some reason, but yeah, we spend so much time there, and man, I think about that, Vic, when I'm up there camping. If you talk to somebody like Martin Groves when he was up there, now he was hunting at the time, but one came right into his camp when him and somebody else was there because it followed him out. And I think about that. But it's just, we always have our mind on Bigfoot when we're up there. But man, I think about that. I don't know if I could handle that. I don't know what I think they are, where they come from. I don't know if it's, it's extraterrestrial or something coming through a portal or from another dimension or, something like that. David Blaylock wants to know if there's any encounters in Northern California.
Oh yeah, you name the state, the area of the state, and over the years that I've been doing this, oh yeah, there have been encounters from pretty much every place, pretty much every corner, and all that. And when you're talking about the LBL, understand, if these guys were kill you on sight monsters, as soon as they had the opportunity, they'd rip you apart. Mm-hmm. Well, then yeah, if you did camp in the LBL, because I guarantee you at any given time you've got a certain population of dogmen there, then yeah, they're going to make their presence known on their way to pulling your head off. But the fact that they're not kill you on sight monsters, except for in certain circumstances, by saying that, I'm talking about, yeah, like Kumbo said, you name the species and you're going to have deviant examples of that species, whether you're talking about people, serial killers like Ted Bundy, or horses, or camels, goats, pigs, even dogs, house cats. You've got examples from every species where if they can harm you, they will. So why should dogmen be any different? But I'll tell you this. Here's something that I really want to put out there. Dogman, I know this is going to be a really profound statement, but if you have an encounter with the dogman, the numbers tell you that the odds of you being harmed intentionally by that dogman are actually lower than if you have an encounter or interact with a horse or a camel or a dog or a pig. I'll tell you why I say that. Over the years I've been doing this, like I told you, I've literally spoken with thousands upon thousands of dogman eyewitnesses. Well, over the years, the grand total of credible eyewitnesses who've ever told me about being harmed by the dogman they interacted with is a whopping 6 or 7. Now, let's take dogmen out of the picture and replace them with horses. Okay, let's say you took 3,000-4,000 people who told you that, yes, I've interacted directly with a horse or horses. And then you pull that 3,000-4,000 people and say, okay, how many of you have ever been intentionally harmed by a horse or the horses that you've interacted with? Well, that number right there, if you asked, say, 3,000-4,000 people like that, the number of people who told you that they have been intentionally harmed by a horse they interacted with would be in the hundreds. If you swap out horses for goats, pigs, camels, elephants, you name it, that number would be in the hundreds. So that right there tells you that these guys are ridiculously very particular about if they actually harm anyone. They're very particular about how and when they do that. So, and you'll have those people who say, well, people who've been murdered by these guys, they can't tell their stories. And that's true. That is true. But also don't lose sight of the fact when I'm saying that these guys clearly are not kill you on sight machines. If they were kill you on sight machines, and I wouldn't have spoken with who knows how many eyewitnesses over the years who had a dogman towering over them in the woods in a situation where the dogman could have done anything it wanted to do to that person without anyone else in the world ever knowing. But that person was allowed to leave without a single hair on their head being harmed. They left that experience without a single scratch. If they were kill you on sight machines, they never would have been allowed to leave like that. You try that with a mountain grizzly bear. You try that with a tiger and tell me how that works for you. They'll kill you. They will kill you because when it comes to people, a lot of them, pretty much they are kill you on sight machines. If you're talking about a wild specimen like that, and if you're up and close and they have the opportunity to do that. So that's why I say that.
I think they intentionally know that they're intimidating. I mean, all the stories that you hear and the ones that I've heard from actual eyewitnesses where they show their teeth or, well, they really exhibit really dog-like behavior when they, have a lot of encounters with them.
Yeah, that's the worst part when you try to help an eyewitness off the ledge when they've had one of these guys in their face, and of course they'll wrinkle up just like a really angry wolf or dog, and they'll wrinkle up their muzzle, and then you've got all these sharp teeth right in your face, and they know how to push our buttons. That's the problem. They know how to push our buttons, and they've got the mentality and the look that just exacerbates the problem. And then on top of that, how bold they are. It just makes it worse. Talking about how bold they are and what I mentioned earlier, how they just don't care. They're not afraid of you. Okay, so what? You've got a 12 gauge laying on your lap. They don't care. They don't care. There was an episode recently where this poor eyewitness, I think it was his friend was just beside himself when he saw him this one day. And the friend, after a while, after some coaxing, because at first he was having a really hard time talking, he was so rattled. But the friend eventually got it out to this eyewitness that a dogman had come walking into this guy's campfire area. This guy was sitting by the campfire alone this day or this night. And this dogman walked into the area fairly close to the campfire where this guy was sitting and had a hot dog roasting on a stick. This dogman walked up and just casually grabbed the hot dog and pulled it off of this guy's stick and ate it right in front of him. What are you going to do about that? You got a problem with that? Bold. Yeah. Imagine trying to deal with that. There's nothing, Bama. There's nothing like talking with an adult. It's just horrible. People ask me if I like dogmen. Do you listen to shows about dogmen? It's basically, is there a novelty? No, there's no novelty to it. There's no novelty to it. When you talk with so many people where, you talk with kids who unfortunately have had horrific encounters with these guys, and, they're just beside themselves, and you see what this has done to them and how much work it's going to take for these kids, because I can't do it alone. It's a teamwork thing. Mm-hmm. I need to bring things to an eyewitness's attention and help give them guidance on what I think they need to do, given whatever experience they've had, to try and steer them in the right direction. But they need to work on that themselves. But yeah, when you talk with so many eyewitnesses who have had their lives turned upside down by experiences with these guys, there's no novelty in them. I hate dogmen. I think they're horrible.
Yeah.
But you talk with a man or a woman who is in their 50s or 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you name it. And when they're talking to you, you swear you can hear them vibrating. It's almost like they're sitting on a paint shaker. It's no different. They're talking to you. When you're talking to an adult, there's a certain rhythm you expect. And there are other things in the delivery of their speech that says, okay, yeah, you just know you're talking to an adult. Well, you talk to a seasoned adult like that who has been reduced to the point of, I mean, it sounds like you're talking with a poor kid who, right before going to bed, looked underneath their bed and they came nose to nose with the boogeyman. I mean, they're that rattled, so taken off their game. How can you like Dogman when you talk with eyewitnesses who have been made to bear that? Yeah, I think they're horrible. So, no, I don't like Dogman. I hate them.
I always wanted to ask you this. Once again, since you have so many accounts and trying to find similarities or differences in them, has anybody reported any vocals along with? Now, I'm not talking about just a growling or something, but has anybody reported vocals? We get vocals at LBL that of course, Spencer and Mark and them analyze a lot of our all our audio that we have, and we get vocals that we get a lot of howls up there, and it's not coyote howls, and I don't think it's red wolf howls. I wonder if anybody's ever said anything to you about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there have been a lot of cases where people talked about vocalizations that they heard. One of the vocalizations that they can make, again, I'm not all that good at explaining things. I guess the best I can do to try and describe it is it would sound kind of like a mix between you know how when like a bull is hungry, it's feeding time. You know how bulls will bawl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh,
well, yeah, I guess kind of like a mix between a howl and a bawl, I guess. Kind of like a mix between the two. It's a howl, but it's definitely deeper and it's got an element to it that it definitely says, okay, I'm not a wolf. That's one vocalization they can make, but we have no clue what the limits are of the vocalizations they can make. You'll hear sounds and people ask, is that a Dogman? And I'll tell them, I don't know, because we just don't know what the extent of their library is. But other sounds, I'll say, yeah, that is. But yeah, they make several sounds, definitely.
I wondered if anybody had ever heard anything. We have gotten lots of calls back where we've elicited a response and gotten howls back, and we've always recorded everything. But one night at LBL, we literally, Larry Porch was in his vehicle and I'm in mine, and he just stopped on a road. And when I asked him, I always want to know the reason for things later on, but I asked him later on, why did you stop at that spot? He goes, I don't know, I just had a feeling about it, I just stopped. But we stopped at a spot and opened our doors, and before we got out, nobody had made a noise, nobody had done anything, and people were still getting out of vehicles. There were two of the loudest, longest howls, and they almost went in like harmony with each other. When one of them started, the other one came in with it, and they were different pitched howls. And I get chill bumps thinking about that. But I just wondered if it's a Dogman. I always wondered, does it howl? Does it bark? It obviously growls. I just wondered about that, because a big old bull, a big old bull making a noise, it's really horn-like, like foghorn-like. It's that loud and high-pitched.
Yeah, especially around feeding time. When you're bringing the feed in. Yeah, definitely.
Or you got them separated from their cows off in another pasture somewhere. We have all kinds of cattle around here, but where I grew up, I could hear my uncle's cows down in the bottoms, and it was easily half a mile away. I could hear that bull, down there cutting up. I always wondered that. Well, I'll tell you what, let me see how long we've been going here. We've been going about an hour and 15 minutes. So, man, we're going to start wrapping it up here. Man,
before we wrap this up, not to interrupt you there, Bama, but something I wanted to throw out there for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure if you wanted to discuss this or not, but
yeah,
I was blown away. I'm pretty sure that my mom had encounters with Sasquatch when she was a little girl.
No kidding. Let's hear that.
By the things that she told me, and it's funny, growing up, she had told me about this several times, but it wasn't until I was probably about maybe in my 20s or so that I started putting the pieces together, and I thought, you know what? I think Mom had some booger encounters. She grew up where they had to walk a good distance through the country to get to school. There wasn't a bus to pick them up. So there are spots where they had to walk down through hollers and everything like that. And there was this one particular place. She never did take me and show me where this was, but there was this one place where there was a pretty good sized forest where they walked down the road, dipped down through a hollow and back up the other side. And on a pretty regular basis, she and her two sisters would notice that pebbles or little stones would be kind of tossed in their direction, almost at them. They wouldn't hit them, but they'd come really close. And she told me about that. And there's another time when Mom and her two sisters and her grandpa and grandma, and they had company over at the time, they were all in the farmhouse, and it was real late at night. And someone saw some glowing eyes in the tree line out back past the chicken coop that were way too high to be a man. And number one, they were too high to be a man. Number two, they were glowing. I don't know if it was glowing from the lights on the house. I never really asked her that, but one of the men in the house fired off a shot, went outside and fired off a shot. And it wasn't long after that, the eyes disappeared. But as the years went on and I started learning things about Sasquatch, I started putting the pieces together. I thought, well, that sounds like a Sasquatch. That must have been a Sasquatch back then. So, yeah, maybe the ones that used to toss pebbles at Mom and her sisters, maybe one of them followed her home. I don't know, but sounds to me like she had her encounters as well.
Did you ever get to discuss it with her after you knew?
No, I didn't. I wish I could have, but I never did.
That's funny. I wonder. We've had, before I moved back down here, I started kind of, dabbling around, talking to people down here about maybe seeing things. And, found out that I have several childhood friends that had sightings when we were younger, back when we were in school together. Nobody ever, said anything about it or anything. I always find that interesting. Now they're really will come and just kind of tell me about it. But yeah, I wondered, having said that, I wonder how your mother would have, received that.
She was really open-minded. I think she would have been wide open to the idea. She was a true country girl. I mean, she used to talk about having to pin her basset hound puppy's ears behind its head whenever it would eat so it wouldn't bite its ears. And a hen pecked her eyelid one time. I asked her, why is that one little piece of your eyelid missing? Well, when she was a little girl, a hen pecked her eyelid like that, and it cut her, and that's why she had that little piece of her eyelid missing. I mean, she was a true country girl, so she was wide open to things like that.
That is something else. That's the one thing. Also down here, and there's all these people down here are my age, the ones that have told me stories and stuff like that. I wanted to ask you this, since we're from Alabama down here. Do you ever hear anything from the Bankhead National Forest or any of the national forests in here?
I'm pretty sure I have.
I've got several reports of not Dogman, but several reports of Sasquatch reports from the Bankhead.
Oh, I'm sure I have. I'm sure I've received both Dogman and Sasquatch reports from the Bankhead, and yeah, I've received them from tons of other national forests, state forests, you name it, all over.
I think somebody mentioned Daniel Boone Forest a little while ago in the chat, and they was wondering if you'd ever got anything out of Daniel Boone because they go up there all the time, which is really a hot spot for Bigfoot. I don't know about Dogman.
Oh yeah, there are a ton of dogmen there too, and I've actually had episodes of the show where guests talked about encounters with dogmen in the Daniel Boone. Episode 63, the one that Vicky mentioned, I think, that she likes so much, with old Jake. I think that's the one that took place in the Daniel Boone.
All right, y'all. People in the chat that were talking about that, asking about Daniel Boone, check that one out. Episode 63. Vic, I ain't going to keep you no longer. I want to get Mark back on here. It's been such a treat having you on. Everybody in the chat knows you. Anybody that's in the Bigfoot world or the Dogman or into paranormal and stuff know you. You've got a great podcast, and man, I've loved it. It really was one of the first things I started listening to when I got into this.
Well, thanks for listening. I'm glad you liked the show, and of course, thanks for the good words. I appreciate it.
I would like to just very briefly, I don't know if we can do this briefly. If somebody has I've kind of been answering questions as we've gone along, but if anybody has, one for Vic or me or Mark or whatever, just go ahead and throw it out there right quick. And everybody wants to know if there's dogmen in the areas where they're at, Vic. So see?
Everyone always does.
Yeah.
And yet Trackers see episode 7. The guest's audio, that was when I was just getting my start for Dogman encounters, and I hadn't really learned all the particulars and how to solve problems with guests' audio, but episode 7 took place in the Sam Houston. So
there you go.
All over. Yeah, that's not the only eyewitness either. Several of them have.
I'm so surprised that you can remember the episodes that well.
Yeah,
hey, there's a little question from this is Christine down in Florida, CD Squatcher. Anybody ever have any talk about Dogman and Sasquatch interaction, seeing them run together?
See, that's the thing. For the longest time, it seemed like Dogman and Sasquatch mixed like oil and water. In almost every instance where you had somebody who would frequent an area where they had both, they'd tell you that they noticed there was some kind of a feature that would normally separate the area where the Sasquatch would live and then the Dogman would live, like a creek or some other feature like that, a highway. But anymore, you hear about more and more instances where people see them running together. For a long time, there are people that posed that idea, but their reasoning behind that was they would see maybe smallish to mid-sized Sasquatch prints. And then right next to those prints, they would see clear Dogman prints, or maybe right on top of the small to mid-sized Sasquatch prints, they would see the Dogman prints. Well, that doesn't mean that the Dogman and the Sasquatch were running together or walking together. My opinion is there's a high probability that the Dogman was actually stalking that Sasquatch.
Right.
But I don't know that. That's a supposition on my part. I don't know that for sure, but now you hear so many people talking about seeing them together, and I don't know what's going on with that. I really don't.
The more you look into it, the more confusing it is. Bigfoot's hard enough, but at least with Bigfoot, it's almost like we have a list of characteristics, and they pretty much fit into those characteristics somewhere. The Dogman thing, I don't know.
Yes.
Mark, we've had a awesome guest tonight. Vic, we're so tickled you came on.
I am just honored that Vic would come on. He actually about a month ago reached out to me, and I just want everybody to know how genuine this man is. Who you hear on Dogman Encounters, that voice that gravitates people to him. This is him in real life, and he's just such a nice man, and I am privileged to call him my friend.
Well, thank you, Mark. I feel the same way. That's awfully nice of you to say that. I don't deserve the credit, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. And like I said, that goes two ways.
Well, just keep up the good work, and man, maybe we'll get to have you on again sometime. If you get something really, really good, let us know. Not that it's not all good. We just don't want to wear you out. You know, when we started having when Greg House first came to our show with his encounters, I think I had him on my show a long time ago, the first time, and it was so good that he came back for 4 different shows. Wasn't there 4 parts, Mark?
Yes.
There was 4 parts, and each part was about 2 hours. So that's the advantage that we took of Greg House with his with his encounters and all the stuff going on his property. I think that Greg was on there with you the other day, Vic, on Spencer and them show. I think he popped on there.
He was.
So we won't, wear you out. But of course, when you ended up being on Spencer and Misty's show, I thought, man, I got to see if I can get him on my show. And I'm so appreciative.
Well, thanks for reaching out. It's been a great time. And anytime you like for me to come back, just say the word and be happy to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. And we're glad that you're a part of our group now, too.
Glad to be a part of it, too.
And we appreciate everyone watching, whether you were able to watch us live or if you're watching us at a later time. We just appreciate each and every one of y'all. I'm going to pin the link to Vic's channel in the comment section up at the top. So if you're not subscribed, we definitely encourage you to go and subscribe to Vic's channel. And we want to thank everybody again for coming on and watching. And there we got Moose to come on to say goodbye. And there's my friend.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. I hear you've been on fire.
That's what all the women say.
That's what I heard.
Well, we're going to close on out. Thanks again for everybody listening. I hope that it was worth your time. And once again, thanks to Vic. It was this was a real treat.
Night, night, everyone.
This has been a Sawdust production.